Planned Parenthood, limited profile in Canada, although a great deal of influence. But in the United States, just listen to this. Fiscal year 2011-2012, last year effectively, Planned Parenthood received $542 million in public funding. $542 million. A country that is struggling with huge debt and deficit and unemployment. I'm shocked. I really am shocked because they also, they fundraise to such a large extent as well. They performed a record high of 334,000 abortions, just under, six under that, 334,000 abortions. When you think the number, those people who would have become tax-paying citizens, working, improving the country, but there are so many things that are wrong about this. Let's talk about it. Billy Valentine from the Susan B. Anthony List, a pro-life organization in Washington. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me on, Michael.
It's a pleasure. Now, I'm surprised by this, but maybe I'm just naive. Are you surprised?
You know what? I'm not, Michael. It's sad, but President Obama is the most pro-abortion president we've ever had, and Planned Parenthood is a top ally of his. He's the first candidate for president they've ever endorsed. And, you know, they spent between $10 to $15 million to help get him reelected and to help elect him in the first place. And in return, they're getting over $500 million of our taxpayer funding. So unfortunately, under this administration, I'm not surprised by these numbers.
But we know that many of the victims of abortion, completely out of proportion to their numbers in American society, are black babies. I mean, we know they're even targeting those communities. So the first black president of the United States of America is giving huge amounts of taxpayers' money to make sure that black babies are never born. There is something colossally wrong with this image.
That's absolutely right. And I actually spent this morning at a congressional briefing we hosted, and Dr. Alveda King was one of our presenters. She's the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., yeah. And that's exactly what she talked about. But really, it goes back to the founding of Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger believed in white supremacy. She believed in purifying the race. So they're just carrying out Margaret Sanger's agenda today.
Well, this is very true. Margaret Sanger was a great believer in social engineering and eugenics. And many of her friends on the left, we think of people like George Bernard Shaw. We named a drama festival after him in this country, and H.G. Wells. To a certain extent, you won't know him, but Tommy Douglas, the leader of the Socialist Party in this country, and so many others, Fabian socialists and the like, believed in this. Often they were horribly racist and getting rid of the handicapped, the disabled. The homosexual, they believed that people who showed any inclination towards homosexuality should be sterilized. These are the sort of people we're talking about. Now, today, Margaret Sanger is revered and lionized by feminists and those who support abortion.
That's correct. And what they do is they cast aside the views of Susan B. Anthony, who our group is named after, who called abortion child murder. And her other allies in the movement who believed the same and who believed that children were not property to be discarded like women were once treated as property.
Yeah. Tell me, there's a greater issue of abortion, but within the black community, there seems to be, there are black conservatives and black Christians who speak out against Obama and his support for abortion. But the vote, the black vote was still 90-odd% for President Obama. Are you really making inroads into that community?
You know, there's a lot of great people with Dr. Alveda King at the helm who are leading this charge. I was just at a rally down in Richmond, Virginia just last week where Ryan Baumgartner spoke about his experience and how he was adopted. And he's putting up billboards in the black communities talking about abortion and how it's targeting their communities specifically, disproportionately, like you said. So we still have a lot of work to do, but there's some great leaders in the black community stepping up, and especially in the churches, and combating this.
Right. But when it comes to the general population, you're a country struggling financially, and I think it's probably going to get worse and not better. Now, even if abortion is completely allowed and so on, there are no laws restricting, to give more than $500 million of public money to an organization so they can pay for what is elective surgery seems to me immoral.
Well, that's right, and especially considering there's, you know, over 1,000 federally qualified health centers that don't do abortions but provide the same services Planned Parenthood does and more where women can go. It's a one-stop shop for all their health needs.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense from a fiscal standpoint. It doesn't make sense from a healthcare standpoint. And abortion is not healthcare.
Yeah, that has to be emphasized, because often those who advocate abortion talk about women's health. I mean, only a lunatic would oppose women's health. There are women's health centers that give everything that Planned Parenthood would offer, but say, no, we're not going to abort. They're not receiving the same sort of funding. It's become an icon for the left.
That's right. And what makes it even worse is Planned Parenthood in this annual report during fiscal year 2011-2012 had $1.2 billion in net assets.
Wow.
I don't know of how many nonprofits out there in this economy here in America have $1.2 billion in net assets. And they showed they had over $80 million in revenue over expenses and therefore profits. So this is an organization that can stand on its own with those kind of assets, and yet the American taxpayers paid a record amount to them during fiscal year 2011.
Quite incredible. Good to know. I mean, it's not comforting to know, but it's good to know it. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Michael. Take care.